Oh my, this is awesome. This is Cyberpunk 2077. Now, before on my 5600 XT 6 GB, I was running it at 1440p, but it was on medium settings with FSR set to balanced. Now, I've got high settings, the high preset, and FSR's turned up to quality. So we've got a higher preset and a higher resolution, a higher native resolution that we're rendering at, and it's running way smoother at high on quality than it was before when it was running on medium on balanced. It's running super smooth. There's less pop-up. This is awesome. And I didn't even have to reinstall my drivers. I literally just popped this card in and away she went. What a sweet upgrade. Yeah, that's right. I bought myself a new GPU. This is basically a Christmas present to myself. Between some gift cards that I got and some cash, I was basically able to pay for like 80 to 85% of this graphics card off. And then I just had to pay the rest in the taxes myself. I wasn't like super gung-ho about getting a new GPU, to be honest. In some ways, I still feel like my 5600 XT still does what I need it to do for the most part. But this was a really good deal. This card was on sale for $499. It's been pretty popular. It was one of our more popular GPUs for Boxing Week. We had about 30 of them when they went on sale on the 23rd. And when I bought mine on the 28th, we were down to the last 3. So I was like, I got to, do it now or they're going to be gone. And, shortly after I bought mine, the last 2 sold and were sold out. So there was really 3 really good GPU deals we had for Boxing Week. We had an RTX 2060 for $299 Canadian. That's like $222 US. So really, really awesome card for someone on a budget. And then we had this, the 6750 XT for $499. And then on the higher end, we had an Asus Strix RTX 3070 Ti for $799. And we had a non-Ti, a Gigabyte RTX 3070 for $699. So kind of had like the low, medium, high covered. Also, we had some 4080s and 4090s in stock that some people were buying, around the Christmas season. Although they weren't on sale, obviously, maybe goes without saying. Those ones weren't on sale, but people would still buy them if we had them. So the people that want the really high end are going to get the 4080 and the 4090. Part of the reason I wasn't also super gung-ho on this is I'm kind of weird in that I'm really picky when it comes to my graphics cards. I've almost always had Sapphire. I've got my 5600 XT is a Sapphire card. And I'm sort of a sucker for the way it looks. I love the red Sapphire logo that lights up on there. I think that looks great in my system. And Sapphire also makes, quality-wise, when it comes to AMD cards, in my opinion, and not just my opinion, I've seen this on Reddit, a lot of people on Reddit asking who makes the best AMD cards, and time again, I'll see Sapphire come up top of the list, and the AMD reference cards, which, as far as I know, are made in the same factory. They're made by the same company. The same company that makes the Sapphire cards makes the AMD reference cards. So those are very well built cards, and I like the way they look. The AMD reference cards have that red Radeon text that lights up red, and the Sapphire card's kind of similar, but it's the Sapphire branding that lights up. And I've always liked those cards. I like the way they look, and I like the build quality of them. But, to a point, this was a pretty good deal, and I kind of just had to settle. AMD sells the reference 6750 XT for $599 Canadian. So it would be $100 more plus shipping. And then also, again, I had the gift cards for the store. At my store, we don't sell the AMD reference cards, nor do we sell the NVIDIA Founders Edition cards. Those are really only supposed to be sold directly from AMD and directly from NVIDIA, especially the AMD reference cards. You typically won't find those in stores, except for when the cards first launched. Anyways, point is, I wasn't super on board with this right away, but as I saw the stock of these depleting day by day, and, factoring in that I had gift cards to the store, and I might as well get something for myself for Christmas, well, here we are. For those that don't know, this card is based on the RDNA 2 graphics architecture. This is the same technology that's running the graphics inside of the PS5 and the Xbox Series. And on paper, this card is more powerful than a PS5 in pretty much every way. It's got more CUs or more stream processors. It's got higher clock counts, higher clock speeds. It's running, this card has 12 gigabytes of GDDR6. The PS5 runs on GDDR5, so the RAM is faster. The PS5 has 16 gigabytes of GDDR5 in total, but that's system memory, and that is shared with the video. So the game program and the OS is going to take up some of that. Now, all that said, of course, it's hard to compare anything with consoles because the consoles are very well optimized. They're not running the same OS. They're not running the same drivers. There's also in-game the amount of optimizations that are done on the console is pretty staggering. And yeah, it's very hard to compare. So even though this may be better than the PS5, technically in every way, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to run all games better than a PS5. Although, honestly, in some cases, I think it probably will. You probably read the description or the title of this video, and that's what got you, maybe that's what got you to click it, and that's RTX 3070 performance. The fact is, yes, in raw rasterization, this card is as fast as an RTX 3070. Don't take my word for it. I'll show you some benchmarks. I've looked at benchmarks from several different sources, and they all pretty much came to the same conclusion. There are some games that run a little bit faster on the 6750, and there are some games that run a little bit faster on the 3070. That's, as it always is, that's expected. Some games are better optimized for AMD, some games are better optimized for NVIDIA. But they really are shockingly similar in performance. I mean, most games were, give or take 5%. Maybe one game was a little faster on the AMD card, and then the next game was a little bit faster on the NVIDIA. And it pretty much went back and forth. There was a couple games I saw where it was pretty much the frame rate was identical. So yeah, in raw rasterization in traditionally rendered games, yeah, absolutely. This card gives you RTX 3070 performance, and in Canada, it was $200 cheaper than the cheapest RTX 3070 that I could find. So pretty big price difference there. To say that you're getting the same performance for $200 less would certainly be clickbait. Obviously, there's a catch. And that is in ray tracing. AMD cards, RDNA 2 and RDNA 3, can do ray tracing. Some people don't know that. Some people think the AMD cards can't do ray tracing. They can. This card can do ray tracing, but none of them come anywhere close to their NVIDIA counterparts. So if you're comparing like a 6600 XT to a 3060 Ti, you're comparing this 6750 to a 3070, or if you're comparing the new stuff, the 7900 XTX to a RTX 4080, price bracket by price bracket or like tier by tier, the AMD cards will not come anywhere close to their NVIDIA equivalent. This card is on par with a 3070 in traditionally rendered games, but as soon as you turn on ray tracing effects, it's going to be slower than an RTX 3060. The AMD cards really are way behind NVIDIA when it comes to ray tracing, and that's going to be the biggest difference. If you're playing a lot of games with ray tracing, it's probably worth it for you to spend that extra like $200 on an NVIDIA card. The other differences are small, and they're getting smaller every day. AMD drivers have gotten a lot better over the last several years, and people are finally starting to realize this. I've seen more and more and more people over the last 3 to 6 months who are coming over to AMD, who are looking at AMD and going, oh, their drivers aren't as bad as I thought they were. I've even seen people claiming that they've switched from NVIDIA to AMD, and they're admitting that the drivers might actually be better on AMD. The control panel specifically is much more modern on the AMD cards, and I think it's better personally. So driver issues aren't what they used to be. A lot of people think, oh, if you go to AMD cards, you're going to have driver issues, but that's not really true anymore, and that's been getting better and better over the last probably 3 or 4 years, to be honest. But especially the last like 2 to 3 years, they've really gotten better, and people are finally realizing this. I've seen so many people finally admitting this, finally realizing this, and part of that is thanks to the pricing of NVIDIA's 40 series cards and the kind of hate that NVIDIA's been getting lately. With their pricing, and they are kind of, the NVIDIA CEO is a douchebag. There's like no denying that. The guy's just an asshole. He really doesn't come across like he cares about the consumer at all. The other two sort of differences that I would say NVIDIA is better at, but that gap is getting smaller and smaller, would be, like, I guess the AI upscaling, DLSS, is certainly better on NVIDIA than like FSR is on AMD. Although that said, I think DLSS 3.0 I think is lame. Adding fake frames to make the frame rate higher, but yet adding latency, input lag while doing so, to me like literally makes no sense at all. And that frame insertion stuff to get higher frame rates, it's just fake. You just want a bigger number in the corner of your screen when you're playing a game, but it's fake. DLSS 3.0 is stupid, and I know a lot of people agree with that. DLSS 2.x, on the other hand, amazing technology. Their AI upscaling is top-notch. But the thing is, for me, FSR 2.0 or 2.x is close enough that typically I can't really tell the difference. They both look good. And I think DLSS maybe has more support in more games, but more and more games are slowly getting FSR support. Cyberpunk finally got FSR 2.0 support. But for example, Microsoft Flight Simulator still hasn't got FSR support. I think it's had DLSS support for like a year or more. So yeah, there are certainly more games that have DLSS support, but I would say slowly more and more games are also getting FSR support. And while technically DLSS 2.x is better, I can't really tell. The other things encoding, especially for live streaming, NVIDIA's NVENC encoder is definitely better. And for live streaming, I think that comes into play. Now, I don't really live stream. I just kind of record the video, and then I'll use that in my video editing to put it in a video. And I've turned up by default, I forget what it was by default, the bit rate in the AMD drivers for recording video. it might have been like 40 megabits per second, and I turned it up to like 80. And I think the recordings look great. Go and watch my Metro Exodus video. That looks perfectly fine to me. So I think the issue is more when you're actually live streaming, that the NVENC encoder just ends up looking better for whatever reason. Although that said, AMD's latest graphics cards support the AV1 encode. And I don't think it's been implemented yet in the drivers or in, I guess, like OBS and stuff like that. It needs to get updated to handle it. But in theory, once that happens, the AV1 encode should pretty much, like the NVIDIA cards are going to support AV1 encode and the AMD cards are going to support AV1 encode. So that gap should also narrow. And so eventually, to me, it's really just, it comes down to the ray tracing. That's like that's the one main area where AMD falls way behind NVIDIA. So that's where they need to improve, and they know that, and they have improved. 6,000 series to 7,000 series ray tracing improved, but it only improved marginally, and NVIDIA is improving just in leaps and bounds. When you look at the RTX 20 series to the RTX 30 series to the RTX 40 series, they're making these huge improvements in their ray tracing. Ray tracing is definitely the one area where AMD needs to improve. That said, again, this card is RDNA 2. It's the same architecture that's the GPU inside the PS5, for example. And the PS5 can do okay with ray tracing. But again, a lot of that is optimization. A lot of the ray traced reflections in PS5 games are quarter res. So if the game's running at like, 1440p, the reflections are only running at like 720p, but then they get filtered and they're kind of blurry anyways. So it's like, it's not a huge deal. Like I said, it still looks okay, but a lot of that is optimization, I think. And I don't see why those same optimizations couldn't come to PC. Like, those ports should be able to do the same level of ray traced reflections and shadows and global illumination and anything that Spider-Man does. The PC port on an AMD should be able to do. So, again, I don't know if a lot of this comes down to software optimization, driver optimization, game level optimization. It might. I don't know. Yeah, maybe there'll be some more ports as we see more PlayStation and Xbox ports. Specifically PlayStation. Well, it doesn't matter. Again, the hardware is so similar. This is basically the same graphics architecture that's in both of the modern current day consoles. So anyways, that's it. I guess we'll put this card in. While I'm putting the card in, I'm also going to be installing this 1 terabyte M.2 drive. It's PCI Express Gen 3 NVMe, 33 megabytes per second. Not the fastest Gen 3, but for the price, this thing was on sale for $49.99 Canadian. That's like $37 US. $37 US for a 1 terabyte M.2 SSD is incredible. For me, it's just going to be it's not going to be my main drive. My main drive will still be my Western Digital Black M.2. It's a 500 gigabyte, and it pretty much just has the OS and programs installed on it. I have a 1 terabyte SATA SSD for my games drive. So that's a 550-ish megabyte per second. So going to a 3300 megabyte per second is going to be a huge improvement. So again, it's going to be just going to be a game drive. So I'm going to have a 1 terabyte M.2 in there for some games like Microsoft Flight Simulator and Cyberpunk, where I think it'll be more beneficial for them to be on the M.2. And I'll still have the SATA 1 terabyte in there for games that are slightly less demanding or older, where I don't feel they need the storage speed. So I'll just be throwing that in, obviously, while I got the computer apart and I'm changing the card. I'll be throwing that in too. So that was also a Boxing Week sale, along with a 32 gigabyte Kingston SD card for 99 cents. That was just I'm buying it because it's 99 cents type of a thing. And honestly, same with the M.2. I don't 100% feel like I need it, although that said, with some of those games, I think it is beneficial to be running those off of an M.2. And I typically don't like to install games on my main M.2. Again, it's only a 500 gigabyte anyways, but yeah, so I think that's going to be awesome to have that in there as well. And I guess that's it, guys. See you later.